Chosen one, hear this word. There are moments in the journey of God as people when the Spirit does not call them to move, but to be still. There are days when the winds outside are not the winds you are meant to face, when the path is not the path you are meant to walk, when the Lord closes the door not to restrict you, but to preserve what He is building within you, and so the message rises like a trumpet from the Ancient of Days. Do not step out on that Wednesday. Stay in the place I have set you. Stay in the sanctuary I have prepared. Not because of fear, not because of danger, but because God has marked a divine pause upon your steps. In the Scriptures, there were days when God commanded Israel to halt, to remain in the tent, to remain under the covering, to remain in the presence. On the night of Passover, the command was not go, but remain. On Sinai, the call was not to advance, but to wait for the voice from the cloud. When Elijah fled to the mountain, the Lord told him not to rush forward, but to stand still until the still, small voice came. Every chosen one has a day like this, a day that is not meant for movement, but for alignment, a day that is not meant for stepping out, but stepping into the deeper chambers of God's will. Wednesday is not a calendar date. It is a spiritual appointment, a moment carved into the tapestry of your life where heaven says, this is the day I refine you. This is the day I shield you. This is the day I whisper what cannot be heard in the noise of your routine. For if you step out at the wrong time, you step out of rhythm. If you move without His leading, you move without His wind. And what God is preparing in the secret place cannot be received in the rush of the world outside. Chosen one, hear this, God is not holding you back. He is holding you close. He is calling you into the inner room, the place where distractions fall away, where the heart becomes soft again, where the noise of the world cannot extinguish the voice of the Spirit. He is bringing you into a holy pause, a divine stillness, because something is being shifted inside you. The enemy calls you outward. The Spirit calls you inward. The world says, hurry. God says, wait. Flesh says, move. Destiny says, be still and know. So when this Wednesday comes, not as a literal command, but as a spiritual symbol, recognize it. Recognize the moment when God tells you, withdraw, step back, come into the inner chamber, let me surround you. For what God builds in the quiet becomes unshakable in the storm. What God plants in stillness bears fruit in the season of movement. What God hides for a moment, He reveals in power. Chosen one, this is not a day of retreat. This is a day of divine positioning. A day when heaven draws you inward so that your next step outward is ordered, empowered, and unstoppable. Stay in the place of His presence. Stay in the shelter of His voice. Stay where He can shape you, strengthen you, and set you apart. For in the stillness of that Wednesday, God is preparing your Thursday. And when He releases you, you will walk out with revelation, clarity, and the fire of purpose. There are moments in the life of a chosen one when the Spirit of God moves not to command action, but to call for stillness. It is in these moments that the eternal purpose of God intersects with time, and the winds of heaven meet the steps of the faithful. The divine pause is not a restriction, it is a sacred interruption. A pause placed deliberately in the flow of your life so that you may be positioned in alignment with the will of God. It is a moment when the ordinary rhythm of your days must yield to the extraordinary purpose of His plan. To resist this pause is to resist the hand of God itself. For in the stillness He is shaping, refining, and preparing that which cannot be hurried or forced. Throughout the ages, God has used moments of stillness to bring revelation to His people. On the night of Passover, Israel was commanded to remain inside their homes, and in that pause, salvation came. On Mount Sinai, the people were not to move forward until the voice of the Lord was heard from the cloud. And in the wilderness, Elijah was told to wait, to sit in silence, to hear the still, small voice that carried the future in its whispers. These were divine pauses, moments when the visible world could not dictate the movements of the chosen, when patience was sanctified and obedience became a conduit for revelation. In these pauses, the hidden currents of God's purpose are revealed to those willing to wait. The divine pause is not a passive moment. It is active in its stillness. It is not the absence of life, but the presence of God preparing the life that is to come. When God calls you to pause, He is creating a space where your spirit can be molded, your faith can be strengthened, and your destiny can be preserved. The pause allows your heart to recalibrate, your mind to refocus, and your soul to receive that which cannot be given in the rush of activity. The world may see stillness as stagnation, but in the economy of heaven, stillness is the soil from which miracles grow, revelation springs, and divine strategy is enacted. For the chosen one, the pause is also a test of trust. To remain still when every instinct, every routine, and every external pressure calls you to move is an act of faith. It is a declaration that you recognize the sovereignty of God over the days and hours of your life. It is a willingness to step back from the noise, the urgency, and the distractions of the world in order to hear the cadence of heaven. It is in this quiet obedience that the Spirit can work without hindrance, moving in ways unseen but powerfully effective. The divine pause reminds the chosen one that timing belongs to God, not to man. To rush ahead without the Lord's signal is to risk falling into snares, delays, or destruction that might have been avoided. To step out at the wrong moment is to disrupt the orchestration of the Almighty, to trade His perfect timing for human impulse. But to pause, to stay in the place He has designated, is to walk in alignment with His rhythm. It is to become part of the eternal pattern that unfolds with precision, wisdom, and supernatural favor. This pause is also a call to attentiveness. God does not call you to stillness to make you idle. He calls you to watch, to listen, to prepare, and to receive. He is working in the unseen realm, arranging circumstances, fortifying your spirit, and opening doors that no human hand could open. He is refining you in the quiet so that when the time comes to move, you will move in power, clarity, and purpose. The pause is a hidden season, but it is a season of divine movement in your life that will later manifest visibly in ways that astonish and inspire. So, chosen one, embrace the divine pause. See it not as a limitation, but as a divine intervention. Step into it with trust, with patience, and with an expectation that God is at work. In this pause, the Spirit speaks, the heart is prepared, and the destiny of the chosen is fortified. What may seem like a still day is in truth a day of heaven's orchestration, a sacred alignment, and a preparation that no rush can replace. The divine pause is God's hand upon your life, guiding you, shaping you, and preparing you for the fulfillment of His will. There are moments in the life of a chosen one when every step must be weighed, every movement must be measured, and every decision must be aligned with the divine will. Spiritual alignment is the unseen cord that connects the soul of the chosen to the purposes of God. It is not determined by human desire, convenience, or urgency, but by the rhythm and voice of heaven. When God calls for stillness, when He commands a pause, it is not merely for protection, but for alignment. To move out of sequence, to step ahead of the appointed time, is to risk falling out of harmony with the very purposes God has designed for your life. The prophets of old understood this principle. Joseph remained in prison not by circumstance but by divine design, for the years of waiting aligned him with the throne he was destined to occupy. Moses lingered in the wilderness not in failure but in preparation, learning obedience and patience before stepping into the leadership God had appointed. David waited for the anointing to be fulfilled, walking carefully in alignment with God's timing and instruction. Every pause, every moment of stillness was not wasted. It was carefully orchestrated to align the chosen with the purposes that were greater than the present moment, purposes that could only unfold in their appointed season. Spiritual alignment is more than timing. It is a condition of the heart. It is the posture of obedience, the willingness to place God's will above human impulse. It is the recognition that the movements of the flesh, the urgencies of the world, and the pressures of circumstance are not guides for destiny. When God calls a chosen one to remain in a place, He is calling for alignment of spirit, mind, and purpose. He is calling the individual to step into the exact pattern He has drawn, a pattern that will protect, strengthen, and elevate in ways unseen by human eyes. The world sees action as the path to fulfillment. The enemy whispers, "Move, go, take the chance, do what seems right in your eyes." But the Spirit calls for pause, for stillness, for quiet obedience. And it is in this quiet obedience that the chosen one finds the alignment that produces clarity. When the heart, mind, and spirit are tuned to the same frequency as God, when the steps match the will, and when the timing meets His rhythm, every movement becomes powerful. Every decision resonates with purpose. Every action carries the weight of heaven behind it. Spiritual alignment also protects the chosen from the snares of the enemy. When the steps are out of sequence, when the timing is ignored, the plans of the adversary gain traction. Missteps bring delays, disappointments, and even danger. But when alignment is honored, the Spirit moves invisibly to guide, shield, and orchestrate. Doors open, paths clear, and opportunities emerge that human wisdom could not have arranged. What may seem like inactivity is actually strategic positioning, a hidden movement in the realm of the Spirit that sets the stage for future victory. To remain in alignment requires discipline. It requires listening for the subtle voice, recognizing the nudges of the Spirit, and obeying even when understanding is limited. It requires surrendering human instincts for the sake of divine orchestration. And it demands faith, the unwavering belief that God's plan is greater than the urgencies of the moment, that His timing is perfect, and that every pause is purposeful. The chosen one must understand that alignment is not passive waiting, it is active attunement to the hand of God. When Wednesday comes as a symbolic moment of pause, it is not a day to fight, to rush, or to resist. It is a day to step into spiritual alignment. It is a day to tune the heart, mind, and soul to the voice of the Spirit. It is a day to recognize that God's timing is sovereign, that His plan is unshakable, and that obedience produces power far greater than haste. The alignment received in stillness becomes the foundation for future movement, the launching pad for destiny, and the invisible force behind every triumph yet to come. Chosen one, embrace the call to spiritual alignment. Understand that stillness is not weakness, waiting is not loss, and pause is not delay. These are the sacred instruments God uses to mold, guide, and position the faithful. For when heaven and heart are aligned, the chosen one steps forward, not just ready, but irresistibly equipped to fulfill the plan that has been written for their life. There is a place the Lord calls His chosen ones to, a sacred chamber, hidden from the eyes of the world, yet open to the eyes of the Spirit. This inner chamber is not a physical space, but a spiritual reality, a place where the soul meets the presence of God in its purest form. It is here that the distractions of the world fall away, the noise of life quiets, and the heart is laid bare before the Almighty. When God commands a pause, when He calls for stillness, it is an invitation to enter this inner chamber, a place of intimacy, revelation, and transformation that cannot be reached in the busyness of the outer life. The Scriptures are full of this pattern. Jesus withdrew from the crowds to pray in secret, to the solitary garden, to the upper room where His Spirit could commune with the Father without interruption. Daniel rose early and prayed in the privacy of his chamber, receiving visions and understanding that would shape nations. The prophets went to the mountains, the deserts, and the quiet places where heaven could speak without competition from the world. This inner chamber is where destiny is clarified, faith is strengthened, and divine strategy is revealed. It is where the chosen one learns to hear the voice that cannot be heard in the chaos of the street, where the Spirit can teach, guide, and prepare without distraction. Entering this chamber requires obedience. It is not entered by desire alone, nor by habit, nor by routine. It is entered by following the voice of God, by stepping back from the urgencies of life, by resisting the pull of the outside world. To stay in when the world beckons is an act of faith, a declaration that the unseen is greater than the seen, that the Spirit's guidance outweighs human instinct. It is a moment when the chosen one recognizes that true power, true understanding, and true preparation do not come from movement, but from presence. In the inner chamber, the soul is refined. The trials of life are filtered through the lens of divine understanding. Fears are exposed, desires are examined, and the heart is calibrated to the purposes of God. The Spirit works quietly, but with precision, shaping what cannot be shaped in public, strengthening what cannot be strengthened amidst the distractions, and preparing what cannot be prepared in haste. The inner chamber is a crucible of spiritual formation, a place where the chosen one is equipped to carry weighty assignments and bear the glory of God's plans. This chamber also provides protection. While the world rages outside, while forces of opposition rise and schemes form unseen, the chosen one is sheltered in the secret place of the Most High. There is safety in the stillness, security in the obedience, and power in the silence. Here, attacks are disarmed, distractions are neutralized, and the mind of the Spirit becomes the guide. What the world sees as inactivity is, in truth, divine activity, preparation, revelation, and empowerment that will manifest in its fullness when the appointed moment arrives. Entering the inner chamber brings clarity. Questions are answered, visions are revealed, and the path forward is illuminated. The chosen one begins to see not with human eyes, but with spiritual insight, discerning the patterns of God's plan in the events of life and understanding the significance of each step. It is in this chamber that courage is renewed, faith is fortified, and hope is deepened. Every decision made after leaving the chamber carries the wisdom and authority that was cultivated in the silence. God calls the chosen one to the inner chamber not as a retreat from life, but as an entrance into His presence, into His power, and into His plan. When Wednesday comes as a symbolic day of stillness, it is a call to this chamber, a call to communion, to alignment, and to transformation. To obey is to enter the place where heaven moves, where preparation occurs, and where destiny is secured. It is in the inner chamber that the chosen one learns that staying in is not merely waiting, it is receiving. It is being shaped. It is being made ready for the next step in God's unfolding plan. There are moments when God commands His chosen ones to remain in place, not to hinder them, but to protect and preserve what He has set apart. In the natural eye, it may seem like a pause, a moment of inactivity, or even a limitation. Yet in the spiritual realm, it is a shield, a divine hand of protection that surrounds the faithful and preserves their destiny. The chosen one is not left to chance. God's timing is perfect, His wisdom infinite, and His purposes beyond human understanding. What appears as a still day is often a moment of preservation, a strategic pause orchestrated by heaven to safeguard the future. In Scripture, God often used pauses to protect His people from forces they could not see. On the night of Passover, Israel remained behind closed doors, shielded from the death that passed over the land. Noah was kept safe within the ark while the world outside faced judgment. David, fleeing from Saul, found refuge in caves and wilderness places, preserved by God's hand until the time of His anointing. In every case, the Lord intervened not by accident, but by divine design, protecting His chosen from harm while simultaneously preparing them for what lay ahead. The pattern is clear. Obedience to God's call, even to stay in place, is a covenant of protection. Protection comes in many forms. It is not always the removal of danger, but the placement of the chosen one in a position where danger cannot reach them. It is a divine shield that preserves not only the body, but the mind, the spirit, and the mission. The forces of opposition, seen and unseen, are real. The enemy prowls, seeking to disrupt, derail, and destroy, but the one who remains under God's direction is placed beyond the reach of that enemy, preserved by a power far greater than human comprehension. To move prematurely, to step out of alignment, is to expose oneself to forces that could have been avoided. Preservation is also spiritual. God preserves the faith, the hope, and the purpose of His chosen ones through moments of stillness. In these pauses, He strengthens the heart, sharpens discernment, and equips the spirit with endurance. He fortifies the soul so that when the time comes to step forward, the chosen one will not be weakened by fear, distraction, or doubt. Preservation is not a passive waiting. It is a preparation, a fortifying and a refining process. It is God's invisible hand working in the hidden chambers of life, ensuring that the chosen one is intact and ready when the hour of action arrives. The enemy, however, is relentless. Every call to pause is challenged by temptation, impatience, and fear. The world presses forward, urging movement, promising opportunity, and presenting distractions. But the Spirit calls for stillness, and in that stillness, preservation takes place. The chosen one who obeys finds that what was unseen, unnoticed, and unacknowledged is actually a fortress of protection. What seems like waiting is actually divine vigilance, a supernatural covering that shields the heart, body, and destiny. The call to stay in, to remain where God has placed you, is not a denial of life, but a strategic placement in the theater of heaven. It is a positioning that preserves relationships, future opportunities, spiritual authority, and even physical safety. The chosen one learns that obedience is not merely compliance, it is trust. Trust that the hand of God is upon them, guiding, protecting, and preserving. It is trust that what is hidden in the stillness will soon be revealed in power, victory, and fulfillment. So when the appointed day comes, when the Spirit calls for pause, remember that protection and preservation are at work. God's hand is unseen, but it is mighty. His purposes are unfolding, but they are perfect. The chosen one who obeys will find that staying in is not a loss of momentum, but a supernatural alignment with heaven's plan. It is in the obedience to stay, in the faith to wait, that God's preservation is manifested, securing the chosen one's path, guarding their destiny, and ensuring that when they move in triumph. There is a divine rhythm in the life of the chosen one, a cadence set by the hand of God that is often invisible to the human eye, but unmistakable to the Spirit. Every pause, every moment of stillness, every day when the Spirit calls for waiting is not a denial of destiny, but a preparation for what is to come. The Lord does not allow His chosen ones to move prematurely, not because He withholds blessing, but because He is preparing them to walk fully into the purpose He has ordained. What may appear as delay is, in truth, the hidden work of heaven, aligning circumstances, shaping character, and equipping the faithful for a season that will demand strength, wisdom, and courage. The Scriptures reveal the pattern of preparation. Joseph was imprisoned for years, not as punishment, but as preparation for a throne. Moses spent decades in the wilderness, learning obedience and humility so that he could lead a nation. David wandered, hid, and waited so that when he finally assumed kingship, he would be fully equipped to govern in accordance with God's plan. In every case, the waiting was essential. It was the hidden preparation that made possible the public triumph. The chosen one must understand that preparation is not a passive state. It is active, spiritual, and transformative. Preparation shapes the heart. In moments of pause, God works unseen, refining character, strengthening resolve, and purifying motives. The heart of the chosen one is tested, stretched, and calibrated to receive what God intends. Impatience is replaced with trust, doubt with faith, and fear with courage. The trials, the silence, the waiting, they are all instruments in the divine workshop, carving, polishing, and shaping the chosen one for a purpose that is eternal and unshakable. No skill, no wisdom, no insight can replace the preparation that comes from obedience and alignment with the Spirit. Preparation also equips the mind. In the stillness, insight is given. Understanding is revealed. Visions are planted. The chosen one learns discernment, foresight, and the ability to navigate the unseen currents of life. The Lord teaches in the quiet what cannot be learned in the rush of movement. He reveals strategy in the pause. wisdom in the waiting, and understanding in the obedience. When the time comes to step forward, every action is informed by a clarity that could only be received through preparation. Spiritually, preparation ensures readiness. The enemy is relentless, the world is unpredictable, and the path ahead is often strewn with challenges. The chosen one who moves without preparation is vulnerable to attack, misstep, and delay. But the one who waits on the Spirit, who obeys the pause, who embraces the season of preparation, steps forward with a strength and insight that cannot be thwarted. Every moment of stillness, every obedience to divine timing becomes a foundation for future success, a fortress for destiny, and a springboard for impact. Even the smallest pauses are purposeful. The Lord orders every step, measures every moment, and prepares every detail. What may seem insignificant is part of a larger pattern, a divine orchestration that ensures the chosen one is not only ready, but positioned for the fullness of their calling. This preparation is comprehensive, touching the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical dimensions, equipping the chosen one to walk with authority, clarity, and confidence when the appointed time arrives. Chosen one, understand that the pause is not stagnation, the waiting is not waste, and the stillness is not absence. These are the seasons in which God's power is cultivated within you, in which His purpose is sown in secret, and in which the future is being made ready. Every act of obedience to remain in place is an investment in destiny. Every day of waiting is a step toward fulfillment, and every moment of trust in His timing positions you to move with unstoppable strength. When the appointed day comes, when the pause ends, you will walk forward not as one unprepared, but as one fully equipped, fully aligned, and fully empowered. What God prepares in secret is always revealed in power, and what He builds in stillness carries the weight of eternity. The pause, chosen one, is the preparation for your purpose. There are two voices that speak to the chosen one, and in the life of every faithful follower, there is a constant tension between them. One voice is subtle, persistent, and alluring, the voice of the world, the flesh, and the enemy. It tempts with urgency, distractions, and the promise of expedience. It whispers, move now, take what you can, act while you have the chance. It pressures the heart to step ahead of God's timing, to rely on human understanding, and to seek immediate gratification. It is a voice that appeals to sight rather than spirit, impulse rather than wisdom, and fear rather than faith. The chosen one hears it, and it tests obedience, patience, and trust. The other voice is quieter, yet infinitely more powerful. It is the voice of the Spirit, the whisper of heaven, the call of God Himself. It speaks in the language of stillness, of alignment, of patience. It says, wait, remain where I have placed you. Trust in my timing. Step only when I signal. Its cadence is not urgent, but deliberate. Its authority is not enforced, but inherent. The chosen one learns to discern this voice by faith, by sensitivity to the Spirit, and by experience in the hidden places. It is the voice that calls to the inner chamber, that guides toward preparation, that preserves and protects through obedience. The tension between these voices is the crucible of discernment. Every decision, every step, every hesitation becomes an opportunity to listen, to choose, and to align with the greater purpose of God. The world's voice pushes for action, rewards haste, and celebrates immediacy, but the Spirit's voice beckons toward alignment, caution, and divine orchestration. To follow the former is to risk deviation from destiny. To follow the latter is to walk in protection, empowerment, and purpose. The chosen one is tested in this space, not to discourage, but to develop the spiritual acuity that separates temporary impulse from eternal direction. The contrast is also a matter of timing. The voice of the world does not wait for perfection, readiness, or preparation. It urges movement before readiness is complete. But the voice of God always aligns with the appointed moment. It respects preparation, values obedience, and orchestrates events to ensure that when the chosen one moves, they move in power and authority. The tension between the voices sharpens discernment, teaching that obedience is not just a moral choice, it is a strategic act that determines the outcome of destiny. The enemy knows the power of this contrast. It is in the confusion of competing voices that plans are derailed, faith is weakened, and opportunities are missed. The world's voice is loud, insistent, and filled with immediate appeal, while the Spirit's voice is often subtle, quiet and requires listening with the heart. The chosen one must learn to tune their ears, to quiet the distractions, and to distinguish between the pull of human desire and the prompting of heaven. This is the battle of discernment, the test of patience, and the measure of faith. Obedience to the Spirit's voice brings harmony, alignment, and clarity. The chosen one learns that stillness is not weakness, that waiting is not loss, and that staying in place under God's direction is far more powerful than rushing ahead in fear or impulse. The contrast of voices teaches the eternal lesson that timing belongs to God, that wisdom comes from listening, and that destiny unfolds only under the guidance of heaven. Every pause, every moment of obedience